Okay, so in a world where there are a million different skills you could learn, coding, marketing, a new language, you name it, what's the one skill that actually matters the most? Well, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's the master key, the one that unlocks everything else.
So to really get this, we're going to take a quick trip back in time. It turns out pretty much every era has had one single defining skill that kind of separated the successful from, well, everyone else. It's like a key that unlocked success for that period in history. I mean, just look at this pattern. In the 1800s, if you could read and write, you were basically in the top tier of society. Fast forward to the 1990s, if you knew how to code and build a website, you were like a digital rock star. So that leads to the big question. What's the defining skill for our time? And here it is. It's the meta skill of learning itself. It's the ability to pick up a new topic, and I mean really pick it up quickly, and then immediately put that knowledge to work. Imagine needing to learn some new software for your job over the weekend and actually being good at it by Monday morning. That's the kind of power we're talking about. And listen, this isn't just some theory. Big-time companies like Apple value this so highly that they've been known to literally give out awards to their best learners. And you have to ask, why? Because in a world that changes this fast, the person who can adapt and learn on the fly, well, that person is absolutely irreplaceable. All right, so you're probably thinking, great, I want this superpower. How do I get it? Well, before we can even get to the how, we have to tackle this huge, massive myth that stops most of us before we even take the first step. You've all heard this number, right? It just looms over any new hobby or skill you even think about trying. Whether it's playing the guitar or learning to invest, this idea that it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something. And this is exactly why that number is so paralyzing. Let's do the math for a second. 10,000 hours is basically a full-time job for 5 years. Even at 3 hours a day, it's almost a decade. When you're faced with a mountain that high, it's totally natural to just think, why even start? And most people don't. But here's the big, big misunderstanding. That whole 10,000-hour rule, it came from a study of the absolute elite of the elite. We're talking Olympic athletes, world-class violinists, chess grandmasters. It was never ever meant to apply to regular people who just want to become reasonably good at something. You don't need 10,000 hours to have a conversation in Spanish or play a few songs on the piano. So, if we can agree that 10,000 hours is a myth for most of us, then what's the reality? Well, here's the good news. There is a much, much more realistic target that puts almost any new skill you can imagine right within your grasp. Yup, that's it. 20 hours. Research actually suggests that to go from knowing absolutely nothing about something to being surprisingly good at it, you don't need a decade. You just need about 20 hours of focused, deliberate practice. That's it. That's like 45 minutes a day for less than a month. Totally doable. So, how do you make those 20 hours count? It's all about this simple 4-step framework. First, you deconstruct the skill. So instead of trying to learn guitar, you break it down and learn the 4 chords that show up in thousands of pop songs. Second, learn just enough to self-correct. Watch a couple of videos so you know what it's supposed to sound like and you can tell when you're messing up. Third, and this one is huge, remove all the barriers and distractions. Your phone is your worst enemy here. Put it in another room. And finally, you got to commit to the full 20 hours. You have to push through that initial frustration where everybody else quits. That's where the progress is. Okay, so knowing the steps is one thing, but being aware of the common traps is just as important. There are really 3 major obstacles that derail most people when they try to learn something new. The first one, and probably the most common, is just jumping in with no plan whatsoever. We try to just wing it. We rely on instinct. But learning new things isn't always intuitive. Our brains really thrive on structure. And when we don't have the strategy, this is what happens. The whole process just feels slow and painful. You know the feeling, right? You take a bunch of notes in a book that you never look at again. You get all excited and sign up for an online course, but then you abandon it after the 3rd video. It's just an incredibly inefficient and honestly frustrating way to do things. So the second big obstacle is a lack of discipline. We all get excited about the idea of learning something new, but in a world with a million distractions, just being excited about it isn't enough anymore. Think about it this way. Learning is just like going to the gym. You can't just show up once a year and expect to be in shape, right? It's the consistent, regular workouts that actually build muscle and transform your body. Well, learning works the exact same way.
Small bits of practice every single day are infinitely more powerful than one huge all-night cram session once a month. And that brings us to the third and maybe the most tragic obstacle of all, and that's acquiring all this new knowledge and then just letting it sit there, collecting dust in your brain.
At the end of the day, learning isn't a passive sport. It's not about collecting random facts for trivia night. The whole point, the real goal, is to apply what you learn, to use it to get a better job, to build something amazing, or just to make your life more interesting.
This brings us to the final, and honestly the most important piece of this whole puzzle: how to turn all that knowledge into real-world power. Nearly 100 years ago, Napoleon Hill wrote this in his classic book, Think and Grow Rich, and it's just as true today. Knowledge is only potential power. Action is power. It's such a simple but profound idea. Knowing something is passive. Doing something with what you know, that's when it becomes real power. And the futurist Alvin Toffler brought this idea right into our century. He said that in our time, being illiterate doesn't mean you can't read or write. It means you can't learn, unlearn, and then relearn. In a world that changes this fast, if you're standing still, you're actually moving backward. Being a lifelong learner isn't just a nice idea anymore. It's a basic requirement for success. And that's really what it all comes down to. That giant barrier, that 10,000-hour mountain you thought was in your way, it's just a mirage. The real number isn't 10,000 hours. It's just 20. 20 hours of focused effort. So the only real question left is, what will you learn first?